Hey guys, in my last video I showed off my front of house rack and talked about how that worked, and I also promised that I would show my stage rack. So here it is. This is my stage rack. Again, it is a 4U enclosure, and this is a custom built flight case. My dad built this, so it's not, you know, it's only got rack rails in the front. There's no rack rails in the back, so it is again built to be very lightweight. So as you can see, it starts off with a custom Neutrik patch panel that has been made. It's got power con in and out. Like my front of house rack, these are just passively connected, correctly terminated and earthed. And then the power from those just goes directly into the power supply for this switch. There is nothing else that needs power in this rack. So to talk about the switch, here I have a Cisco SF302 switch. It is pretty much identical to the SG300 that I have in my front of house rack. The difference here is this is only 100 meg, although these two are gigabit switch ports. And it also has PoE capability, which is something I need a lot more of in my stage rack than I need front of house. So front of house, I only really need one PoE port, hence why there's just an injector there. Whereas here, I have every single port here is PoE. And the switch here is configured pretty similarly to my front of house switch. I've got ports 1 to 4 for lighting and ports 5 to 8 as my guest network. And they are tagged for a lag group here that goes through my front of house snake, which you can see is here. I've just plugged in 2 network cables. Normally I have a proper Ethercon snake between the two. So what's handling the DMX out of this rack are these 2 network nodes here. The first one I have here is an ETC response 4-port gateway. This is one of the newer ones from ETC. This has 4 DMX outs on the back, which come through to ports 1 to 4 on the patch panel. And then I also have an older Net3 ACN gateway from ETC. This guy's pretty old now, but it still does absolutely everything that this guy does. So this has also got 4 DMX ports out the back, which are coming through to these ports here. So my default config for this, so the config in these nodes does change on production to production, but my default config, which is running here, I have universes 1 to 4 on this node and 5 to 8 on this one. So on this patch panel, I've got universes 1 to 8 coming out here. Now, a lot of the time when I come to shows, I will change the port configuration on these. So I might have like 2 or 3 copies of universe 1 coming out, and then 2 or 3 of universe 2 and 3. So it's very rare that I'm using 8 consecutive universes. I'm more just using this as a big DMX splitter, although I prefer using nodes to splitters just because I know I've got 4 DMX signals right from the source. So yeah, that's kind of what I use this rack for. The reason I use ETC nodes, I used to use ELC nodes, but the reason I switched to ETC nodes is so that I can get the RDM from these in ETC's concert software. So I can get full RDM control, all of the fixtures connected to this all the way back to EOS. Whereas with something like an ELC node, you can only get it as far as ELC's software, rather than all the way back to the console. So yeah, this rack is quite simple. It's usually when I've got this out on a show, it's sat on the fly floor and isn't really touched too much, to be honest. It's left powered up the whole week that I'm out on a show, and doesn't really get much attention, just because it's once it's working, it's working. Yeah, and that's kind of it. There's very little heat generated in this rack, hence why I don't take the back cover off, unlike my front of house rack. There is a blanking plate at the bottom there just to let some air in, but to be honest, there's just a switch and 2 nodes in here. There's no real heat generated. So yeah, that's my stage rack. I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, if you haven't seen my video on my front of house rack, check that one out next.